In a world of polished glass and cold steel, Isabella Sterling commanded an empire from a throne of Italian leather, her office a silent cathedral overlooking a city that moved to her command. Her hands, always perfectly manicured, signed contracts that shifted global markets, yet they had never known the satisfying grit of honest labor. Her world was a fortress of calculated risks and sterile victories, a place where emotion was a liability and trust was a commodity to be traded, not given. Loneliness was the price of her power, a silent partner in every acquisition. Miles away, in a small garage that smelled of oil and metal and effort, Leo Vance lived a different truth. His hands, permanently stained with the ghost of grease, could diagnose the soul of a machine by its hum. He was a widower, a single father, and his world was not a kingdom, but a small, warm apartment where the greatest treasure was his 7-year-old daughter's crayon drawing taped to the refrigerator. His life was a quiet testament to integrity, a fortress built of love and principle. One rainy afternoon, these two worlds collided with the sound of a dying engine. A sleek, custom-built supercar, a machine of impossible complexity and obscene expense, sputtered to a halt directly in front of Leo's humble garage. The door hissed open, and Isabella Sterling emerged, her sharp suit and sharper expression a stark violation of the quiet street. "My car has stopped," she announced, not as a request for help, but as an accusation. "The manufacturer's technicians are an hour away. Can you at least get it out of the rain?" Leo looked from the paralyzed marvel of engineering to the woman who seemed just as cold and Jingmi. He nodded slowly, his calm a stark contrast to her palpable frustration. He felt the weight of her judgment, the casual dismissal in her tone. Little did she know, she was not just looking at a mechanic. She was looking at the man who had designed the very heart of machines like hers, long before he had chosen a different life. Leo pushed the silent beast of a car into his bay, the tires whispering on the concrete floor. Isabella followed, her heels clicking with an impatient rhythm. She watched, her arms crossed, as he circled the vehicle. She saw a simple mechanic, a man in grease-stained overalls, a relic from a world she had long since transcended. "It's the ion flux capacitor," she stated, reciting the diagnosis from a frantic call to a technician in another country. "It's a sealed unit. No one outside the factory can touch it. Just keep it dry." Leo didn't respond. He simply placed a hand on the car's hood, closing his eyes for a moment as if listening. He felt the faintest tremor, a dissonant vibration that spoke a language he knew better than his own. He ignored her comment, walking over to his worn wooden workbench and picking up a few simple, unassuming tools. He wasn't looking at a sealed black box. He was looking at a puzzle, a symphony of errors he could already hear. "Don't bother," Isabella said, her voice sharp with condescension. "You'll only do more damage. My people are the best in the world." Leo looked at her then, his gaze steady and clear. "Sometimes, the best in the world are too busy reading the manual to listen to the machine." Without another word, he slid under the car. Isabella scoffed, pulling out her phone to escalate her complaint. But a sound stopped her. Not the crash she expected, but a series of quiet, precise clicks. A soft hum, a whirring that grew into a confident, powerful purr. The engine was running. Leo slid back out, wiping his hands on a rag. He stood up, meeting her stunned silence. "The kinetic energy recovery system was misaligned," he said simply. "It was creating a feedback loop that starved the capacitor." A 5-minute fix. He held up a small, custom-made wrench. "If you have the right tool," Isabella was speechless. Her team of world-renowned engineers, the men she paid fortunes, had been baffled for hours over the phone. This man, this nobody, had fixed the unfixable in minutes, with nothing but his hands and a piece of steel. A seed of astonishment had been planted in the barren ground of her certainty. That night, Isabella couldn't shake the image of the grease-stained mechanic and his quiet confidence. It was an anomaly, an unacceptable deviation in her perfectly ordered universe. She did not believe in accidents or coincidences. She believed in data. At her command, a full security and background check was initiated on one Leo Vance. The file that landed on her desk the next morning was thin, but what it contained was explosive. For 5 years, he was a ghost. Before that, he was a legend. Leo Vance was not just an engineer. He was the engineer. The prodigy who had graduated top of his class from the most prestigious technical university, the lead designer behind the revolutionary propulsion systems that her own company was now desperately trying to replicate. His name was whispered in awe in the highest echelons of the industry. Then, 5 years ago, he had vanished. The official record cited a catastrophic project failure, a public disgrace, and his immediate resignation. But the subtext in the file hinted at something more: an ethical dispute, a refusal to compromise on safety protocols, a man who chose professional exile over moral corruption. He had walked away from fame, from fortune, from a world that was supposed to be his. He had chosen this garage, this quiet life. Isabella stared out at the city skyline, the report clutched in her hand. The man in the garage wasn't a relic. He was a king in exile. The condescension she had felt was replaced by a disorienting mix of intrigue and, to her own surprise, a sliver of respect. The world saw a failure. She was beginning to see a man of unbreakable principle. And in her world of cutthroat compromise, such a man was rarer and more valuable than any technology she could ever hope to build. She knew she had to see him again. It was no longer about the car. It was about the man who had so effortlessly fixed what she believed to be broken. The next day, Isabella returned to the garage. She wore a simple pantsuit, leaving the armor of her corporate identity behind. She found Leo not under a car, but on a small stool, watching his daughter Mia draw with chalk on the clean concrete floor. Mia, with bright, curious eyes, looked up at the tall woman in the doorway. "Hello," she said, her voice a small bell. Leo stood, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Miss Sterling, Isabella, please," she corrected, her voice softer than she intended. She knelt, an unfamiliar gesture for her, to look at the chalk drawing. It was a picture of a smiling sun, a lopsided car, and 2 stick figures, a man and a little girl, holding hands. "That's me and my daddy," Mia explained proudly. "He can fix anything." Isabella looked from the drawing to Leo. In that simple, heartfelt declaration, she felt the cavernous emptiness of her own life. She had a boardroom, a portfolio, an empire. He had this. He had everything. Mia tore the drawing from her pad and held it out. "This is for you. So you don't feel sad." Isabella froze. The child's innocent words pierced through decades of carefully constructed defenses. She took the drawing, her fingers tracing the waxy crayon lines. A lump formed in her throat. "Thank you," she whispered. Just then, her phone buzzed with an urgent notification. Her face hardened as she read the screen. A major system failure in her company's flagship autonomous transport project. A public demonstration was days away. The initial reports screamed sabotage. "What is it?" Leo asked, seeing the color drain from her face. "My company. My project. It's being destroyed from the inside," she said, her voice tight with fury and a hint of fear. Her gaze fell on the screen again, where the name of her chief rival, Marcus Thorne, was mentioned as a potential beneficiary of the disaster. "I need help," she said, looking directly at Leo, the words tasting foreign and desperate. "I need someone who can see what others can't. I need you." An alliance was being forged, not in a boardroom, but on a chalk-dusted garage floor, brokered by a child's drawing. Leo was hesitant. He had left that world of corporate intrigue and betrayal for a reason. He had built a peaceful life for Mia, a life free from the poison he knew lurked in those glass towers. "I'm just a mechanic now," he said, the words a shield. "You're more than that, and you know it," Isabella countered, her voice regaining its edge of command, but now tempered with desperation. "Marcus Thorne is trying to ruin me. He's planted a flaw in the system's core logic, something my own team can't find. They say the entire platform needs to be rebuilt, a process that would take months. I have 3 days." She saw the conflict in his eyes, the pull between his past and his present. "I'll pay you whatever you want." Leo shook his head. "It was never about the money," He glanced at Mia, who was watching them with wide, knowing eyes. He saw the flicker of worry on his daughter's face and knew he couldn't let her see him walk away from someone who needed help. It was the principle of the thing. You don't let a bully win. You don't watch something broken and not try to fix it. "All right," he said, the decision settling in his soul. "I'll look at the schematics." That night, Isabella's sterile penthouse was transformed. Blueprints and data charts covered her marble coffee table. Leo, still in his work clothes, moved with a quiet, focused intensity that Isabella found captivating. He ignored the opulence of his surroundings, his mind already deep inside the machine. His fingers flew across a tablet, scrolling through millions of lines of code. Her own engineers had been through it a dozen times. But Leo wasn't just reading the code. He was listening to it. After hours of silence, he finally spoke. Here, he pointed to a single, elegant algorithm. "This is the heart of your guidance system. It's beautiful," he paused. "And it's the source of the problem." Marcus didn't add a flaw. He weaponized its perfection. He explained how Thorne had created a specific, rare data input that would cause the flawless logic to cascade into a total system shutdown. It was a ghost, invisible to standard diagnostics. "We can write a patch," Isabella said, relieved. "No," Leo replied, his expression grim. "He'll have anticipated that. The patch would trigger a secondary, more destructive failure. He's covered his tracks. Digitally, we're at a dead end." Their first effort had hit a wall, and the clock was ticking. The setback settled a heavy silence in the penthouse. Isabella paced, the frustration of being powerless a feeling she despised. Her team, her resources, her entire empire was checkmated by a ghost in the machine. She looked at Leo, expecting to see defeat, but instead saw a deep, contemplative calm. He was staring not at the screens, but at the city lights below, his mind working on a different plane. "When I was designing the propulsion for the Ares V," he began, his voice distant, "we had a similar problem. A quantum harmonic imbalance that only appeared at maximum thrust. The data said it was impossible. The simulations were perfect." He turned to face her, his eyes alight with a renewed fire. "But the problem wasn't in the software. It was in the hardware. A microfracture in the containment shielding, something no sensor could detect. I only found it because I put my hands on the damn thing." His gaze was intense. "Marcus is smart. He knows you'd look for a digital footprint. He wouldn't be so clumsy. The vulnerability he's exploiting isn't just code. It has to be physical." A wave of understanding washed over Isabella. Her entire team had been fighting a shadow on a screen, while the real battle was in the wires, the circuits, the physical heart of the machine. "The prototype lab," she breathed. "We have to get in there under the cover of darkness." They bypassed the security Marcus controlled. The lab was a temple of technology, clean and silent. Leo moved through it with a familiarity that was both startling and beautiful to watch. He didn't need the diagnostics. His senses were the only tools he trusted. He ran his fingers over conduits, tapped on casings, listening. Finally, he stopped at the primary processing unit. "Here," he whispered, pointing to a small, almost invisible heat sink port. "This port is obsolete on this model. Shouldn't be active. But it is." He produced a small, specialized tool from his pocket and gently pried open the casing. Inside, nestled against the main processor, was a tiny receiver, no bigger than a grain of rice. "It's a wireless trigger," Leo explained, his voice low and grim. "The code I found was the primer. This is the detonator. He's not just planning to shut the system down. He's going to send a power surge through this port and fry the entire network." Live, during the demonstration, he looked at her. "He's not just trying to embarrass you, Isabella. He's trying to burn your company to the ground." They now had the proof, a smoking gun of solid-state hardware. The full, devastating scope of Marcus's treachery was laid bare. With the physical proof in hand, the atmosphere shifted from desperation to focused resolve. They returned to the penthouse, the tiny receiver sitting on the marble table between them like a captured king. It was everything, the key to Marcus Thorne's downfall and the salvation of Isabella's company. "We can't just go to the board," Isabella said, thinking aloud. Marcus controls too many of them. He'll bury this, claim we planted it. We have one shot and it has to be public. It has to be undeniable. Leo, who had spent years avoiding the spotlight, knew she was right. Justice, in this case, required a stage. He began to sketch on a tablet, his movements swift and certain. An idea was forming, a plan that was audacious, risky, and brilliant. It was a strategy born not of corporate maneuvering, but of pure, elegant engineering. The public demonstration, Leo said, looking up. That's his stage. We'll make it ours. The plan was simple in its concept, but breathtaking in its execution. They would let the demonstration proceed. They would let Marcus believe he was in complete control. Leo would create a diagnostic overlay, a program that would run invisibly alongside the main system. It wouldn't interfere, but it would monitor and display the system's core functions in real time, translating the complex data into a simple, visual language anyone could understand. At the moment he sends the kill signal, Leo explained, his voice steady, my program will catch the inbound frequency from his trigger. It will isolate it, display its origin point, and simultaneously show the power surge beginning to build at the port, all live on the main screen for the world to see. It was a trap made of light and data. Isabella stared at him, a sense of awe eclipsing her anxiety. He wasn't just a mechanic or an engineer. He was an artist, and his medium was logic. Can you do it in time? She asked. I'll need access to your primary server and a lot of coffee, he said with a faint smile. For the next 48 hours, they worked side by side, a seamless team forged in crisis. Isabella handled the logistics, securing access, clearing pathways, and managing her loyal staff. Leo coded, his focus absolute, building his elegant trap. In those intense hours, the last of Isabella's icy reserve melted away. She saw the man behind the genius, the integrity, the quiet strength, and the profound decency. He was fixing more than her company. He was fixing the part of her that believed everyone had a price. The day of the demonstration arrived, charged with an electric tension. The auditorium was filled with investors, journalists, and industry rivals. Marcus Thorne stood on stage, a portrait of smug confidence, presenting the autonomous transport system as his own crowning achievement. He spoke of a new era of technology, all while preparing to burn it to the ground. Isabella stood in the wings, her heart pounding. Leo was beside her, his expression calm and focused. He gave her a reassuring nod. Let the show begin, he murmured. Marcus moved to the grand finale. And now, he announced with a flourish, I will initiate the system's full city-wide integration protocol. This was the moment. From his pocket, he discreetly pressed a button on a small remote. He expected the massive screen behind him to go black, for alarms to sound, for chaos to erupt. Instead, the screen flickered, and a new window opened. Leo's diagnostic overlay bloomed to life. A bright red line traced a signal from a device in Marcus's pocket directly to the receiver in the prototype. A second graphic showed a catastrophic power surge building, aimed directly at the system's core. The data was stark, simple, and damning. A collective gasp swept through the audience. Marcus froze, his face a mask of disbelief turning to panic. What is this? He stammered. This is a technical glitch. Sabotage. Isabella strode onto the stage, taking the microphone. It is sabotage, she declared, her voice ringing with cold fury. Yours, she turned to the crowd. For weeks, Mr. Thorne has been trying to destroy this company from within. He planted a device to physically destroy our prototype during this very demonstration. She gestured to the wings. And the man who uncovered his treachery is with us today. Leo walked onto the stage. He was just a man in a simple suit, but he commanded the room with a quiet authority that overshadowed all of Marcus's bluster. He calmly and methodically explained the technical details, his words clear, precise, and irrefutable. He showed how the code was a primer, how the hardware was the weapon, and how Marcus's own signal was the trigger. He had not only caught the assassin, he had dismantled the gun in front of a global audience. Security moved in. Marcus Thorne, exposed and utterly defeated, was escorted from the stage, his empire of deceit crumbling around him. The room erupted not just in applause, but in a roar of vindication. Isabella looked at Leo, the noise of the crowd fading into the background. In the public glare of their shared triumph, she saw not just a savior, but a partner. In the aftermath, the world scrambled to know the name Leo Vance. The reclusive genius, the fallen legend, was suddenly the hero of the hour. News outlets ran glowing profiles, industry giants flooded him with offers, and the story of the humble mechanic who saved $1 billion company became an inspirational sensation. But Leo deflected the attention, retreating to the quiet sanctuary of his garage and his daughter. The next day, Isabella arrived not in a supercar, but in a modest sedan. She found him sitting with Mia, helping her with her homework. She had come to make the offer she knew he deserved. "The board has approved it," she said, her voice formal but laced with genuine warmth. "We want you to head our new research and development division. Chief Innovation Officer. Name your price, your resources, anything." It was the pinnacle of the world he had once abandoned, laid at his feet. Leo looked at Mia, who was watching him with trusting eyes. He then looked at Isabella, seeing not a CEO, but the woman who had shared coffee with him at 3 a.m., who had trusted him completely when everything was on the line. "The title doesn't matter," he said, "and my price isn't money. I want a 4 p.m. hard stop. I pick up my daughter from school every day. I'm at every recital and every parent-teacher conference. No exceptions. And I want to run a small apprenticeship program out of my old garage for kids in the neighborhood." He was redesigning the job, rebuilding it around the things that truly mattered. Isabella didn't hesitate for a second. A slow, brilliant smile spread across her face, a smile that reached her eyes for the first time. "Those are the best terms I've ever heard," she said. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Vance." It was more than a job offer. It was the ratification of a new set of values, for him and for her. A few months later, the sterile penthouse was no more. Isabella had sold it, moving into a warm, inviting house with a backyard. The centerpiece of the new living room was not a piece of modern art, but a large drafting table covered in blueprints. On the wall, framed in elegant silver, was a child's crayon drawing of a smiling sun. Leo stood beside Isabella, his arm around her, as they looked over designs for a new, revolutionary engine, one built on principles of safety and sustainability. Mia sat at the table with them, happily coloring in her own set of blueprints. The grease stains on Leo's hands were still there, but now they were a badge of honor, a symbol of the authenticity that had not only saved Isabella's company, but had also captured her heart. He had rediscovered his professional confidence, and more than that, his capacity to trust again. She, in turn, had been transformed from an isolated queen into an empathetic partner, a leader who now measured success not in stock points, but in the strength of her connections. They were no longer two people from different worlds, but the architects of a new one, built together. They were a family, forged not by blood, but by a shared crisis, mutual respect, and the simple, profound truth that the most complex problems often have the simplest solutions: integrity, courage, and love. Have you ever felt underestimated, judged by your appearance rather than your true worth? Have you ever witnessed integrity triumph over cynicism? This story is a reminder that true genius often resides in the quietest corners, and that the strongest empires are not built on power, but on principle. The greatest things we can fix are not machines, but each other. Share this story if you believe in the power of second chances and the quiet heroes who walk among us.